Imagine a sound so terrifying that it made brave soldiers throw down their rifles and cover their ears in the middle of a battle. A sound that could stop a heartbeat before a single bullet was fired. The date is September 1st, 1939. The location is the border of Poland. The German war machine has just unleashed Blitzkrieg, lightning war upon the world. But the most dangerous weapon in their arsenal wasn't a tank. It wasn't a cannon. It was a simple metal propeller bolted onto the landing gear of an airplane. When the plane dove, the wind spun the propeller, creating a scream that became the soundtrack of nightmare for an entire generation. They called it the Jericho Trumpet. But why? Why would an air force want its bombers to be noisy? Every military strategist knows that the element of surprise is key. You want your bombers to be silent, invisible killers. So why did the Germans deliberately attach sirens to their planes to announce their arrival? Today, we declassify the engineering and the dark psychology behind the Junkers U-87 Stuka. We will explore how Nazi scientists weaponized sound itself to break the human mind before the bomb even hit the ground. To understand the siren, we must first understand the machine it was attached to. Mystery number 1. Why did Germany need a dive bomber? In the 1930s, most air forces believed in level bombing. Large formations of heavy bombers flying high and dropping hundreds of bombs in a general area. This was devastating to cities, but useless against military targets. If you were trying to hit a single tank or a bunker from 10,000 feet up, you have a better chance of winning the lottery. The Germans needed something else for their new tactic of Blitzkrieg. They needed flying artillery, a plane that could deliver a single heavy bomb with pinpoint accuracy right in front of their advancing tanks. The solution was the dive bomber. A plane that wouldn't drop its bomb from high up, but would fly directly at the target, aiming the entire aircraft like a giant dart and release the bomb at the very last second. The concept was simple. The execution was terrifyingly difficult. Enter the Junkers U-87, known universally as the Stuka. It was an ugly aircraft. It had fixed landing gear that looked like bird claws. Its wings were bent in an inverted gull shape. It was slow, it was unarmored, but it was built for one specific purpose: to survive a vertical dive that would rip a normal plane apart. When a plane dives straight down, gravity takes over. The speed increases exponentially. If the plane goes too fast, the wings will rip off due to drag. Or worse, the plane will be compressed by the air pressure and the pilot won't be able to pull out of the dive, crashing straight into the ground. The German engineers at Junkers had to solve this physics nightmare. Their solution was ingenious. Underneath the wings, they installed large, slatted dive brakes. When the pilot was ready to attack, he would flip a switch, and these metal fences would rotate 90 degrees into the wind. This created massive drag, slowing the plane down from a potential 500 miles per hour to a manageable 350 miles per hour. It turned the plane into a stable, slow-falling weapons platform. But solving the mechanical problem only highlighted the biological problem. Challenge number 2, the G-force lock. Imagine you're a Stuka pilot. You're diving at an 80-degree angle, almost straight down. The ground is rushing up at you at 350 miles per hour. You're aiming your gun sight at a tiny bunker. At 1,500 feet, you press the button on the control stick to release the bomb. A special crutch swings the bomb clear of the propeller. Now, you have to pull up. You pull back hard on the stick. The plane changes direction violently, transitioning from vertical down to horizontal flight in seconds. This creates massive G-forces. The pilot experiences up to 6 Gs, 6 times the force of gravity pushing him down into his seat. At 6 Gs, the blood rushes out of your brain and into your feet. Your vision tunnels. Then it goes gray, then it goes black. You pass out. This is called G-lock, G-force-induced loss of consciousness. If a pilot passes out while pulling out of a dive near the ground, he dies. The Germans knew this. So they invented the world's first automatic pilot system for combat. When the pilot began the dive, he set a target altitude on a specialized altimeter. When the bomb was released, the autopilot took over. It automatically adjusted the elevator trim tabs to pull the plane out of the dive at a safe, pre-calculated 6 Gs. Even if the pilot blacked out for a few seconds, the machine would fly the plane and level it off, waking him up as the blood returned to his brain. It was a terrifying dance between man and machine, pushing both to their absolute limits. The Stuka was a marvel of engineering. It was accurate, it was rugged, but Adolf Hitler and his propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels wanted more. They didn't just want to destroy the enemy's body, they wanted to destroy their soul. They wanted a weapon of terror. This brings us back to the Siren. The idea is credited to Ernst Udet, a German World War I ace and stunt pilot who became a high-ranking Nazi official. He realized that the silent approach of a high-altitude bomber was scary, but the loud, inevitable approach of a dive bomber could be psychologically devastating. The device was officially called the Jericho Trumpet, the Jericho Trumpet, a reference to the biblical story where the sound of trumpets caused the walls of a city to crumble. It was shockingly simple. It was a small wooden or metal propeller attached to the front of the fixed landing gear spat. Behind the propeller was a Siren casing with holes in it. During normal level flight, the propeller spun slowly and made little noise. But when the Stuka entered its steep attack dive, the airspeed increased dramatically. The wind forced the small propeller to spin furiously, reaching thousands of revolutions per minute. This spinning forced air through the Siren casing, creating a high-pitched mechanical wail. Furthermore, the sound changed pitch because of the Doppler effect. As the plane approached the soldier on the ground, the sound waves compressed, making the pitch higher and higher, like a screaming demon falling from the sky. It was designed specifically to tap into primal human fear, the fear of falling and the fear of loud approaching predators. In the early days of the war in Poland and France, the effect was devastating. Troops who had never seen a dive bomber before would hear the sound before they saw the plane. It was the sound of inevitable death. You couldn't hide from it, you couldn't stop it. It told you personally, I am coming for you. Reports from the front lines stated that French artillery crews abandoned their guns when the screaming started. Polish cavalry horses stampeded in terror. It was psychological warfare perfected. The bomb might miss, but the sound hit everyone on the battlefield. It broke their nerve before the engagement even began. Imagine for a moment that you are not the soldier on the ground. Imagine you are the man in the cockpit. You are strapped into a metal seat, wearing a leather helmet that smells of sweat and oil. Below you, the earth is a patchwork quilt of green fields and burning cities. Your altimeter reads 12,000 feet. You spot your target, a bridge over the Meuse River. You push the stick forward. The horizon disappears. The world turns sideways, and then the world turns upside down. The siren starts to spin. Inside the cockpit, you can hear it too, a dull vibration that shudders through the airframe. The G-forces build. Your body feels heavy, as if lead weights have been sewn into your flight suit. You are falling toward the earth at 350 miles per hour. The ground is rushing up to meet you. Trees that look like dots become distinct shapes. Then they become individual branches. You are playing a game of chicken with the ground. The greatest danger for a Stuka pilot wasn't anti-aircraft fire. It was target fixation. It is a psychological phenomenon where the brain becomes so focused on the target that it forgets to pull up. The pilot becomes mesmerized by the expanding image of the ground. He feels invincible. He feels like a god hurling thunderbolts. And then he hits the ground. Many Stuka pilots died not because they were shot down, but because they flew their planes straight into the dirt, mesmerized by their own attack. For the first 2 years of the war, the Stuka was the king of the sky. In Poland, France, and the Balkans, it operated with impunity because the German Luftwaffe controlled the air.
But in 1940, the Stuka met its match, the Battle of Britain. Hitler turned his eyes toward England. He sent the Stuka fleets across the Channel to bomb British radar stations and airfields. But over England, the Stuka faced a new enemy, the Supermarine Spitfire and the Hawker Hurricane. The British pilots quickly discovered the Stuka's fatal flaw. When a Stuka dives, it is locked into a straight trajectory. It cannot turn, it cannot dodge, and the siren that terrified soldiers on the ground, it acted like an air brake, slowing the plane down even further. To a Spitfire pilot, diving at 400 miles an hour, a Stuka was a sitting duck. It was slow, it was predictable, and it was screaming, "Here I am." The slaughter was horrific. In a single week in August 1940, the Stuka wings suffered such heavy losses that they were withdrawn from the battle entirely. The weapon of terror had become a liability. The Jericho Trumpets fell silent over England because the planes carrying them were being shot down before they could even start their dive. But the story of the Stuka didn't end in failure. It evolved. On the Eastern Front, against the Soviet Union, the Stuka found a new purpose. The vast, open steppes of Russia were perfect for dive bombing, and here a new legend was born, a man who would become the most decorated serviceman in the history of the German military, Hans Ulrich Rudel. Rudel was not just a pilot, he was a force of nature. He flew 2,530 combat missions. To put that in perspective, most pilots were lucky to survive 50. He destroyed 519 tanks. He sank a battleship, the Marat. He destroyed 70 landing craft. He was shot down 30 times. He lost a leg to anti-aircraft fire and returned to combat flying with a prosthetic leg. Rudel realized that the siren was useless against tanks. Tanks are loud. The crews inside couldn't hear the scream over the roar of their own engines. So Rudel stripped the sirens off. He replaced the psychological weapon with a physical one. He mounted two massive 37mm cannons under the wings of his Stuka. These were anti-tank guns designed for the ground, bolted onto an airplane. Rudel developed a tactic that was insanely dangerous. He didn't dive vertically. He flew low, just a few feet above the ground, behind the enemy tanks. He aimed for the rear of the T-34 tanks where the engine armor was thinnest. He was a sniper in the sky. He proved that the Stuka didn't need to scream to be deadly, it just needed to be accurate. Under his command, the Stuka transformed from a terror weapon into the world's first true tank buster. As the war dragged on, the sirens disappeared. By 1943, most Stukas were being delivered without the Jericho Trumpet. The element of surprise was gone. Allied soldiers had learned that the noise was a trick. They learned that if you stood your ground and fired back, the Stuka was vulnerable. The siren, which caused drag and slowed the plane down, was seen as a waste of fuel. The Stukas were eventually replaced by faster ground attack aircraft like the Focke-Wulf F-190. The bent-wing birds were relegated to night harassment duties or used as transport gliders. The scream that had announced the beginning of the war faded into silence as the war turned against Germany. However, the legacy of the Stuka siren lives on. In Hollywood, have you ever noticed that in almost every movie, when a plane crashes or a bomb falls, there is a screaming sound, that high-pitched whine? That is the sound of a Stuka siren. Sound designers use it for everything, even for planes that never had sirens. It has become the universal audio shorthand for death from above. From Star Wars to cartoons, the Jericho Trumpet is still screaming. The Stuka dive bomber was a machine built for a specific moment in time, a moment when Germany wanted to conquer Europe not just with fire, but with fear. The Jericho Trumpet was a simple piece of metal, a propeller and a slot. But it proved that in war, the way you kill is just as important as the killing itself. It proved that the human mind is a battlefield, and sound is ammunition. Today, the skies are filled with stealth fighters and drones. They are designed to be silent. They kill without warning. But there was a time when the enemy wanted you to know they were coming. They wanted you to hear the end of the world. And for those who looked up and saw the crooked wings of the Stuka diving like a hawk, that sound was the last thing they ever heard.